Good morning. I'm Savannah Sellers.
And I'm Joe Fryer. Right now on Morning News Now, sobering reminder as new coronavirus cases here in the U.S. sink to their lowest level in more than a year. NBC News is reporting more than 600,000 Americans have now died from the virus. We'll bring you the Biden administration's response and its defense of Dr. Anthony Fauci over now controversial emails. Adding up, federal prosecutors are now looking into whether Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz obstructed justice in a potential sex crimes investigation. A law enforcement source tells NBC News. More on how the congressman is responding this morning. Fighting to exist. The dramatic rise in legislation targeting transgender youth across the country is fueling new anxiety for an already marginalized community. Now, one family in Texas is pushing back, fighting for their child's rights. And glow-up, flashy, futuristic-looking LED face masks are taking social media by storm with promises of getting rid of that pesky acne, which may have been caused by your other face mask. We'll clear the air on whether these viral devices are actually worth the hype and the price tag. And if they're not, you have a Halloween costume for this year already.
I fell for it.
You did.
For an Instagram ad.
So you will be our test.
I haven't tried it yet because I'm a little freaked out by it, but I'm interested to hear this information.
I've heard good things. Dermatologists seem to like them.
Yeah,
so
great. Well,
more on that in a little bit. We do want to begin with the coronavirus pandemic and a reminder of how much we've lost despite all the progress. The virus has now claimed 600,000 lives in the United States.
Yeah, we're passing that number less than 4 months after reaching 500,000 deaths. More than 33 million Americans have tested positive for COVID since the beginning of the pandemic. On a brighter note, though, new COVID cases are at the lowest level since March 2020. Right now, an average of 14,000 Americans are testing positive every day. Health experts say it's all due to vaccinations. More than 169 million Americans have had at least one dose. Now, the focus is turning to worldwide vaccination efforts, with the Biden administration announcing where it will ship its first wave of doses overseas. We've got a great team with us this morning to walk through all this. NBC News White House correspondent Mike Memoli has the latest on the Biden administration's response. And NBC News medical contributor Dr. Natalie Azar is here to answer all our questions about the virus, as she has been for months. Thank you both for being here. Mike, I will start with you. Now, we reported yesterday on President Biden's plan to speed up vaccinations here in the U.S., but tell us about what we now know about their plan in this worldwide effort. Where are these vaccinations going? How are we helping other countries?
Well, the Biden administration has made a commitment to share 80 million vaccine doses across the world. Yesterday, we learned where and how they're going to be distributing an initial batch of 25 million that are on their way. About 75% of that 19 million doses will be shared with COVAX. That's the World Health Organization's broader consortium. They will go to Latin and Central and South America, to South and Southeast Asia, as well as to the African Union. Now, 6 million of those doses the U.S. will share directly with some of the areas seeing some of the biggest surges. That includes Canada and Mexico, and to South Korea. Some of those doses were shipped to South Korea overnight. Jake Sullivan, the White House National Security Advisor, talking about what a statement of values this was on the part of the U.S. to make this commitment. Take a listen.
We want to save lives and thwart variants that place all of us at risk. But perhaps most important, this is just the right thing to do. Thanks to the ingenuity of American scientists and the resilience and commitment of the American people, we're in a position to help others. So we will help others.
You can't separate the timing of this announcement from the White House yesterday as well of the president's schedule for his first foreign trip. He arrives in the United Kingdom next Thursday, where vaccine distribution globally is expected to be a big topic of some of the international summits Biden will be attending there.
So, Dr. Azar, right now, 41% of all Americans are fully vaccinated, but most of the world is still well behind the U.S. Remind us why it's so important for other countries to vaccinate their citizens as quickly as possible.
Well, absolutely. And, I think from the beginning, I have been, as many experts have been, a very vocal voice in this concept of, vaccinating the whole world, that this really is a global effort. And, whether you're feeling, whether we're doing it in the U.S. out of generosity or benevolence or out of selfishness, this really is what needs to happen. I mean, if we're keeping our borders closed, and we know that, of course, borders are porous, yes, the first priority, of course, is American citizens, but especially especially as the world's economy opens up and travel increases, we are ever more going to be, in peril because the vaccine will find a place to go. I think I heard an expert say yesterday that it will go everywhere until it can't go anywhere. So basically, if you have unpocketed or pockets, I should say, of unvaccinated areas around the globe, that's where the virus is going to go, and it will spread and it will mutate there.
And Dr. Azar, let's talk about what is going on here at home. These low numbers, the lowest point since March 2020. That's, of course, when New York City became a hotspot. You are a doctor in the city. I know you were in COVID emergency rooms at the time. What does it mean to you that we've reached this point in our fight against the virus? I mean, when you think about this time a year ago, how do you feel about how we're doing?
I know, really, it's such a long time coming. And, if I may say that a year ago or at least March 2020, we were barely doing testing. You know how many patients I see still on a regular basis who say, I think I had COVID in February and March, but I couldn't get a test. Right. So I think that number would be even more dramatic if we really had an account of the true, incidence of COVID back in March of 2020. So it's really remarkable, and kudos to Operation Warp Speed, for getting the vaccine to the finish line and to the Biden administration for a tremendous effort in the rollout, which is being manifested by these amazingly low numbers.
Kudos to you and all of our doctors as well for everything you did.
Mike, let's talk about the recently released emails from another doctor, Dr. Anthony Fauci. They were first obtained by the Washington Post, mainly come from the early days of the pandemic last spring. He's facing some backlash on emails related to the origins of the virus. So tell us, what do we know about the emails and what's the White House saying about this?
Well, Dr. Fauci, by his own account, was sending and receiving upwards of 1,000 emails a day. So there was a lot to go through with the release of these emails, especially for Fauci's critics. Some of the controversy really most centers around this Wuhan lab leak theory, the idea that this might have been manufactured in a lab rather than something that occurred naturally. The White House, as it often seems to be doing, defending Fauci from the podium yesterday. Here's Jen Psaki doing that.
He's been an undeniable asset in our country's pandemic response, but it's obviously not that advantageous for me to relitigate the substance of emails from 17 months ago. We've launched, based on the president's direction, an entire internal review process to use all of the resources across government to get to the bottom of the origins.
Fauci yesterday on Morning Joe calling this evidence for this lab leak theory very sparse, but says we still have to keep an open mind, guys.
All right, Mike and Dr. Azar, great information. Thanks for kicking us off on this Friday.
More than half of New Yorkers have received at least one vaccine dose. Now the city is hoping to get more shots in the arms of younger people. So they're taking the vaccines into some of the city's schools. NBC News correspondent Rahema Ellis joins us now outside the Bronx Writing Academy and the JHS Jordan L. Mott School in the Bronx. So Rahema, good to see you. First of all, tell us, how is this program going to work?
Well, they hope it's a really simple process to get vaccinations into the arms of kids 12 to 17 years old, because all they have to do is show up here at school, like there are two behind me here in the Bronx, and no appointment will be necessary. Just come to school. This is a pilot program that's starting today, as I say, in 4 schools here in the Bronx section of the city. They hope it will be so successful that in the coming weeks as we end this academic year, it will expand to schools all across the city, because the mayor is hoping that they can get the city through herd immunity. Take a listen to Mayor de Blasio.
New York City is ahead of the national average in youth vaccination, and we want to double down on that. We're going to be bringing vaccines directly to some of our schools. It will be expanding to schools across the 5 boroughs. We're going to see if this is the kind of approach that could really help us reach more and more young people.
One of the things in terms of reaching young people, this is a city with a school population of 1 million kids. So if they can reach a large number of them, the mayor says that will help them going a long way, again, to making certain that everybody in the city is safe.
Hey, Rahema, looking ahead to this fall, New York City schools plans to fully reopen in person, no remote option. Getting more kids vaccinated could change what the classroom looks like. Do we know how many school-age kids over the age of 12 have already been vaccinated?
Yeah, we do. According to the mayor, it's about 118,000 New York City school kids aged 12 to 17 years old. He says that's about 23% of the number of kids in that age group, and that's slightly above the national average. In actuality, it's 1% above the national average. What Mayor de Blasio wants to do is to get it even higher than that. Joe?
And Rahima, the city's not just going into schools. What else are they going to try and do to encourage younger people to get vaccinated?
You could just about name it. They're going to have DJ parties. They're going to be vaccinating kids at raffles and at youth programs. They're also planning to have the New York Aquarium offer vaccinations to kids as well. The whole point of this is take the vaccination to where the kids are. Don't make it difficult for parents to get their kids to a vaccination site, but go where the kids are already going. And that's one of the reasons why they're going to be starting this program here this morning at these 4 New York City schools in the Bronx. Joe?
All right, Rahima Ellis, good to see you. Thanks so much.
Florida Representative Matt Gaetz could be facing new legal trouble as prosecutors probe whether a phone call he made obstructed justice in a potential sex trafficking investigation. Here's NBC News Justice correspondent Pete Williams.
According to a law enforcement official familiar with the case, the issue is a phone call that an ex-girlfriend of Congressman Gaetz was having with another young woman. At some point during that call, the official says the ex-girlfriend conferenced Gaetz in, adding him to the call. And because that other young woman is a potential witness in a federal investigation of whether Gaetz was illegally involved in relations with underage women, investigators are looking at whether the phone call could amount to obstruction of justice, an attempt to influence a potential witness. A spokesman for the congressman says this, quote, "He pursues justice. He doesn't obstruct it." After 2 months, the statement says there is still not a single on-record accusation of misconduct, and now the story is changing yet again, the statement said. Now, there's a lot we don't know about this, such as what was said on that call or when it happened. It might make a difference whether it was before or after Congressman Gaetz knew that the young woman was a potential witness. A friend of Gaetz's, former Florida tax official Joel Greenberg, pleaded guilty last month to sex trafficking of a minor and has agreed to cooperate fully with investigators who are looking at whether Gaetz was involved in similar conduct. Congressman Gaetz has not been charged with any crime, and he has denied all the allegations. Savannah, Joe?
President Biden is heading back to the negotiating table today as he looks to strike a deal on infrastructure. Republican Senator Shelley Moore Capito and her team are expected to meet with the president today and present another counteroffer. NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Leanne Caldwell joins us now. So, Leanne, Senator Capito and President Biden also met at the White House just a couple days ago on Wednesday. How realistic are the hopes that they're going to reach any deal?
Good morning, Joe. Low expectations all around from Republicans and Democrats that they'll actually reach a deal. The White House and Republicans are still hundreds of billions of dollars apart. President Biden is insisting they spend $1 trillion. He also is insisting that they pay for this by raising taxes, something that Republicans have said they don't want to do. We also heard from Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell yesterday, who really downplayed his expectations, saying that tax increases is not something that he thinks Republicans are going to go for. So they're going to have this meeting today. We'll obviously see what comes of it, but there's not a lot of optimism that some major deal is going to come from it, Joe.
Leanne, we know the White House has been focused on infrastructure for a few months now, knowing that it's going to take time. How are fellow Democrats viewing this strategy? Is there any indication right now that the president is close to walking away and pushing forward without bipartisan support?
Well, most Democrats, especially the progressives, they want the president to stop negotiating with Republicans. They think he's wasting his time. They think that Republicans are never going to come around to a proposal that Democrats are going to be okay with. But the fact is, Joe, there are some Democrats who want to see these bipartisan negotiations, including Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia. And until Joe Manchin is done negotiating, then it seems like these negotiations have to continue, because Joe Manchin has always said a bipartisan bill is better than a partisan bill. And they are going to need his vote on a partisan bill if anything is going to pass, Joe.
And Leanne, we're also getting details on a smaller bill, the $547 billion surface transportation bill. It was unveiled by the House Transportation Committee. Tell us more. What does this bill prioritize, and does it have a path forward?
Yeah, quite confusing. So while these bipartisan negotiations are going on, House Democrats are moving forward on their infrastructure bill. And so what they've unveiled today is a $547 billion on surface transportation that is a major investment in transit around this country. And it really reimagines what roads and highways and rail and mass transit really does, including bike and commuter transit. And it really incorporates a lot of climate change components into this bill by greening the economy through the transportation system. Now, does this bill have any chance of going where? Absolutely. House Democrats plan to move this bill forward, and they think that this is going to be the core or the base of the much larger infrastructure bill that the president wants and that many Democrats want. So this is just one piece, but one popular piece among House Democrats that we should expect to move forward, Joe.
All right, Leanne Caldwell, good to see you. Thanks so much.
Yep.
And let's get a check on your morning news now. Weather.
Which means Bill Cairns is here. Bill, good morning. You've been giving us a weekend forecast since, I think, Wednesday, right? And now it's finally upon us.
Yeah, I've been a little obvious that I'm looking forward to the weekend. I need to be a little more subtle. All right, so let's get into it. So we had those pretty big storms yesterday. My friends in Baltimore got nailed by a big thunderstorm yesterday. The rest of the East Coast had hit and miss areas of rain. We're going to do it again today. We're still pouring right now from Wilmington right up along the beautiful beaches there on Emerald Isle, Atlantic City Beach. The southern portions of all the Outer Banks are getting nailed with some heavy rain this morning. And it looks like Norfolk, Virginia Beach, another round of rain is heading your way. We will see additional showers and thunderstorms this afternoon, including the New York City area and southern New England. So we're not quite done with the rain, but it will be over with after this evening, and then the weekend looks dry and warm. Out west, all the heat continues. We have cooled off in California, northern half of the state at least, and also in the Pacific Northwest, but still easily 110. But yesterday, we hit 120 in Death Valley. Of course, it's Death Valley. It's typically very hot, but 120 is still 120. So 95 today in Minneapolis. In the Northeast, there's those showers and storms. Temperatures kind of warm and kind of muggy. No problems whatsoever, though, from St. Louis to Denver to Oklahoma City. Middle of the country looks pretty nice. And here is that weekend forecast. Notice the hot and sunny weather. Minneapolis, 96 on Saturday. And then that warmth begins to spread Saturday into Sunday. Look at Sunday afternoon, 94 in D.C., 93 in New York City. Now, you will notice that not everyone is going to have beautiful weather. Down along the Gulf Coast, our friends in New Orleans, Baton Rouge, all the way through Little Rock, and possibly at times Houston, you are going to have to deal with hit and miss showers and thunderstorms all weekend long. So I can't tell everybody you're going to have a gorgeous weekend, but a lot of the country, it is going to be summer. It is going to be head and find a lake, pool, or beach if you possibly can.
Or air conditioning.
Yeah, really. Yeah, none of that.
Good point.
The windows open, whatever you guys try to do. All right, Bill, thank you. Coming up, a closer look at what some security experts are calling America's hidden crisis.
Bring you that story next. The Biden administration is moving to treat ransomware attacks as a national security threat. U.S. officials and other sources tell NBC News. The move follows an alarming number of hacks on U.S. companies and infrastructure. And now, according to Reuters, the DOJ plans to give these hacks a priority similar to terrorism cases. NBC News technology correspondent Jake Ward looks at which targets are most at risk.
Good morning, Joe. Savannah. The White House's guidance for business leaders makes it sound as if some sort of global roundtable will take care of this problem. But considering that everything from transit systems to hospitals can be affected, it may be more complicated than that.
Experts are calling it a hidden crisis across America. Cities and towns facing the threat of ransomware attacks. Here in San Francisco, the transit system was hit by hackers in 2016. Hop on a train today and you'll wind up in front of other victims.
This is the city's public radio and television broadcaster. They were hit in 2018 and it crashed their whole newsroom.
A couple stops away,
here's the Asian Art Museum. This was 2019 and they actually had to bring in city officials to help them get back online.
A top hospital was attacked too.
In 2020, UCSF had to pay a little more than $1 million to get back some research data.
The criminals are so brazen, some offer ransomware services for hire online, listing potential targets they can strike for affordable prices. And if anything, they choose smaller targets for smaller paydays to avoid attention.
They're starting to realize on the criminal side that we need to be much more careful about who we go after, because we don't want to raise that. We don't want to get international governments cooperating with each other to try and take us down.
From groceries to gas to getting on a bus, ransomware is now part of the American landscape.
Joe, Savannah, it's important to understand that the scale of this is only growing. At this point, the insurance industry that covers cyber attacks is estimated to be worth several $billions. And as global leaders and heads of industry try to figure this thing out, it's important to remember that they're also going to have to try to coordinate with everyone from hospital administrators to school superintendents. All of that needs to come together for us to treat this in the way that it needs to be. Joe, Savannah?
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is signaling that he won't go quietly after opposition leaders came together to form a new government. Netanyahu lashed out at his opponents on Twitter, urging right-wing members of parliament to, quote, oppose this dangerous leftist government. Lawmakers will vote on the coalition of 8 parties in the next few weeks. NBC News foreign correspondent Kelly Kobayea joins us now. She is in Tel Aviv this morning. Now, Kelly, good morning. This coalition is fragile, but how much power does Netanyahu have to try to stop it here?
Well, he has a couple of tools that he can use, and really we're talking about more influence rather than any sort of outright action he can take. First of all, he is head of the party that got the most votes in this election. He won about 24% of the vote. Doesn't sound like a lot, but in a country with so many parties, that actually is the largest party. So his party still controls the Knesset. They control the speaker position. And the speaker is the guy who sets the date for this vote. So one of the things that Netanyahu can do is to just delay the vote, the coalition vote that we've talked about so many times now. The other thing he can do, when you take a look at the list of the parties in this coalition, there's, of course, the centrist party, which led forming this coalition, center-left party, a left party, the Arab party, and then you have 4 parties that are basically led by former allies of Netanyahu. They're either center-right or right-leaning or very far right. And these are the lawmakers that Netanyahu and his allies are really going after. They're trying to pick off just one or maybe just 2, convince them not to vote for this coalition when the vote comes up. And they're doing that, as you mentioned, through tweets and also having their supporters, in some cases, show up at lawmakers' houses and protest them. Savannah?
So now, under this deal, right-wing nationalist Naftali Bennett would become prime minister for the first 2 years. But he's teaming up with parties with majorly different views. In fact, the plan is he'll even hand off the prime minister role to somebody with a totally different view after those 2 years. I mean, what do his supporters think about that fact?
Well, I mean, he's had to defend his position. In fact, he was on Israeli TV last night giving the first interview since this coalition was formed because he's getting pushback from some of his voters. And he said a few things. He said he, first of all, tried to bolster his security cred and his all of the things that he said when he was trying to get elected, sort of his campaign platform. He talked about how there would be no freeze on settlement building in the West Bank. That's a big thing for his supporters. He said that there would be no bowing to U.S. pressure on that if the Biden administration tries to force him into doing something like that. And he also said he wouldn't hesitate to ask for military or order military action in Gaza or in Lebanon should it come to that. So really just trying to bolster his point of view, telling his supporters, hey, I'm still your guy and I'll do what I can for you in government.
Kelly Kobayea covering history for us there in Israel. Thank you so much. Let's take a look at what else is making news around the world this morning.
NBC's Raph Sanchez joins us now. Hey, Raph, good morning.
Joe, Savannah, good morning. Authorities in Hong Kong have banned commemorations for today's anniversary of the Tiananmen Square massacre. A prominent pro-democracy activist in Hong Kong was arrested for trying to organize a candlelit vigil in memory of the unknown hundreds of people killed by Chinese security forces in 1989. The Belarusian journalist hauled off a Ryanair flight last month has appeared in what seems to be a forced confession video on state television. Roman Protasevich can be heard praising Belarusia's authoritarian leader, Alexander Lukashenko, but his family says he was speaking under duress. And finally, an 86,000-ton cargo ship has slammed into a dock in Taiwan. One person injured when the enormous vessel knocked over a crane at the port, sending it flying into a pile of shipping containers. And guys, I covered that giant ship that got stuck in the Suez Canal earlier this year, so it has not been a great year so far for enormous cargo vessels.
That is true.
It could have been much worse, though, so good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Raph, thank you so much. See you in a bit.
Coming up, taking the fight for trans rights straight to lawmakers.
We'll bring you one Texas family's battle to let their transgender son thrive next.
It's the ultimate grocery delivery. A SpaceX rocket lifted off from Kennedy Space Center Thursday afternoon, carrying 7,300 pounds of supplies for the International Space Station. It included lemons, onions, avocados, and cherry tomatoes for the station's 7 astronauts. It also includes some stuff they won't eat, at least I hope, like baby squid and microscopic animals for science experiments. The Falcon 9 rocket should arrive at the space station tomorrow. So the next time you put in an order for delivery for groceries, think of that.
Yeah, really. Yeah, let's hope they're not eating whatever the microscopic animals are.
Science experiments. That's what that's for.
Oh, very cool. Gosh, love all the space news. Thanks, Joe. Bills targeting transgender kids have been introduced in more than 30 states, according to the ACLU. Lawmakers in favor of these bills say they are doing it to protect children. But the families of these trans kids say this legislation is putting them more at risk. MSNBC anchor Yasmin Vasugian has more.
When they're passing bills that is going to intentionally make life miserable for children and their families, they're not doing their jobs.
Amber and Adam Bregel are parents of Max and Lulu. Max is a 13-year-old transgender boy, but most of all, he's a kid.
What's the best thing about your mom?
That she's always here.
Here for you?
Yeah. And I can call her and then she'll come.
But here I am.
And she's shown up a lot lately, testifying in front of the Texas state legislature during a hearing to debate a bill that would make providing gender-affirming health care child abuse a felony in the state of Texas.
They're debating our existence. Taking away the support that a child needs to thrive, that is the child abuse, plain and simple.
Amber says only 2 sponsors of the bill stayed in the room during her testimony. State Senator Dawn Buckingham, a co-sponsor, was not one of them.
This is about being sure that we're making the best decisions possible for our kids. You know, as a mom, if my kids said, I only want to eat ice cream every day, all day, I wouldn't let them eat ice cream all day, every day.
The principle they're operating on is that you do what's conducive to your child's health.
Yeah.
This is about saying, I need to just watch you emerge. And when it happens and that light turns on and you're happy and healthy, that's it.
Lawmakers in 31 states have proposed bills banning transgender children from playing sports. 8 states have passed them, and 35 bills in 20 states threaten transgender health care, with 1 now law.
We all imagine what we might be when we grow up.
One of the organizations advancing this agenda is the American Principles Project, which made anti-trans legislation a wedge issue in the 2020 election and spent $4 million in ads in key swing states. The president, Terry Schilling.
There was a transgender athlete that was called one of the bravest women in the world, bravest athletes in the world, and you were cited as saying that's not brave.
I don't think there's anything brave about a male identifying as a female and then competing in women's sports against them. I could claim to be a giraffe, but I'm not a giraffe. I'm a human being.
Stand up. Max practices with his boys' gymnastics club team 4 hours every single day. He and his family have also stepped into the spotlight of trans rights, protesting the advancement of these bills as direct attacks against who he is as a person and what makes him Max.
Your mom and dad protesting for you. What was that like for you?
Makes me feel loved and good.
And Savannah, Joe, both of the bills actually failed in the Texas state legislature as of last week, but the lieutenant governor saying he was urging the governor to call a special session for at least the sports bill to sign it into law. So far, no comment, though, from the governor's office. That being said, and speaking with the Briggle family, they have said they're going to stay in Texas. They lived there for over a decade. This is their fight, and they're going to fight this all the way so long as these bills continue to threaten the transgender community and specifically their son, Max. But what an incredible family, and what an honor to spend a day with them.
And how powerful to just hear him say that. It makes me feel loved. Yasmin, thank you so much. I want to bring in Dr. Jennifer Hartstein. She's an adolescent psychologist. Dr. Hartstein, thanks for being here. So we just saw how these proposals are affecting Max there and his family, but let's look at the broader picture here. Here's a look at just how many trans kids could be impacted in states proposing similar bills. Now, in Texas, the state that they're in, it's nearly 14,000 kids, according to UCLA's Williams Institute. So let's talk about what some of the psychological impacts are that these kids could face with these bills without proper health care, especially knowing that it's a number in just that state alone, like 14,000.
You know, we know that trans kids are already at greater risk for depression, anxiety. They have higher rates of suicide, self-harm, all of these things without bills like this. And here we're putting in a bill that basically tells them that they are not important enough to have their own rights. They are not important enough to kind of stand on their own. They kind of join all of the other marginalized communities. So it puts them at greater risk when they're already. And we know that gender affirming care is life affirming care. And I think we're losing sight of that for so many of these kids.
Okay, Dr. Hartstein, I think I lost your audio there for just a moment, but can you still hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. So what can parents of transgender kids do right now to help their children?
It's such a great question, Savannah. I think the first thing we have to do is not pretend like it's not happening, but talk to the kids in age-appropriate ways and continue to be their strongest supporter and ally. Remind them that they are surrounded by love in their friends and their communities, and that although this is awful legislation, in my opinion, it's not about them as an individual, it's about politics. And so we want to try and separate that a little bit so that we can continue to help them grow and develop into confident kids with, confident adults with great self-worth. And that's what we want our children to be: confident, positive, and healthy.
And Dr. Hartstein, what kind of help is out there for trans kids who are discouraged by these bills? And what would your message be for them?
The discouragement is real. And I think we want to remind them that marginalized communities have risen up. It's Pride Month. This is the time to remember that, Pride Month and all of this started with a revolution. And so here's an opportunity to use your voice, be an activist, and really get in there. And if we need some help, there are some great resources. The Trevor Project is a great place to go and learn about it. Finding supportive therapists or counsel someplace, healthy adults, supportive adults, any of that kind of stuff, to take your worries and concerns there and use those people to kind of validate your existence and validate you. That's what we all need to be successful and healthy.
Dr. Hartstein, one more question for you, because we know that these bills are being passed in these or are being considered in these 30 plus states. We also know at the federal level, there's the Equality Act. What does kind of the confusion about what's going on in each state when you think about the fact that this is these kids' identities, this is who they are, and depending on which state you're in, there's different rules going on, there's different legislation being considered. I mean, what does that kind of do to somebody psychologically?
Because the rules are changing all the time, we've seen this in lots of different marginalized communities over the course of many, many, many years. So this isn't new, but it's also very confusing, because why am I accepted in New York but not accepted in Alaska? And so this is kind of the way life is. Some people are accepting, some people are not. And I think the key is, especially in our homes, to be positive and encouraging and accepting and to really fight for the rights of our children. That's going to go a long way.
That's great advice. Dr. Jennifer Hartstein, thank you so much for being here. And now
Thank you for having me.
Of course, and now if you or someone you know needs someone to talk to, help is out there. Please call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 800-273-8255 or text TALK to 741-741. For every 100 men, 13 will get prostate cancer in their lifetime. But a promising new therapy doctors are calling a game changer could be the breakthrough needed for men in the advanced stages of battling the disease. NBC News correspondent Ann Thompson has more.
Joe and Savannah, this study was done on men with the deadliest form of prostate cancer, and the results were so impressive that the drug is now in trials on men who have early stage disease, with the hope that it could be one more weapon to combat the second leading cause of cancer deaths in American men.
For the more than 3 million men with prostate cancer, this vial may represent an infusion of life.
I'm just happy to be alive. I'm happy that I'm feeling well.
That wasn't the case 4 years ago, when back pain revealed Michael Rosenblum had advanced prostate cancer that spread to his bones.
There in this lower spine that caused quite a bit of pain for him.
After standard therapies failed, Dr. Michael Morris tried something new, using a just-approved PET scan to find the prostate cancer cells with a common protein.
All of these black dots represent islands of cancer.
He then gave Rosenblum 6 infusions of experimental liquid radiation to seek out the cancer cells and destroy them from within, avoiding healthy cells.
This kind of treatment really is specifically going to the prostate cancer cells.
The results out today are promising. The drug reducing the risk of death by 38% and disease progression by 60%.
Does this have the potential to treat men with less severe forms of the disease?
It absolutely does.
15 months after the treatment, Dr. Morris still can't find cancer in Michael Rosenblum.
It really gave him his life back, and that's my hope for every patient.
A life Rosenblum is savoring.
Now, keep in mind that this is just a trial. The maker of the drug, Novartis, is expected to apply for FDA approval. Joe and Savannah?
Thanks, Ann. Coming up, with the pandemic almost in our rearview mirror, one thing Americans are looking forward to this summer, spending our hard-earned cash. And with that, big retailers are looking to cash in. A look at the summer sales battle next. Amazon, Target, and Walmart all saw record revenue during the pandemic as Americans relied heavily on online shopping. But as brick and mortar stores reopen, retail giants are slashing prices to keep the momentum going. NBC News correspondent Stephanie Rule tells us where to get the best deals.
Hey there, Joe and Savannah. We all lived it. In the last year, Amazon, Walmart, Target saw record revenues because of the pandemic, with more and more people turning to shop online. Well, now that more and more brick and mortar stores are opening back up, these retail giants are getting creative and figuring out new ways to keep their momentum going.
It's an all-out battle of the summer sales. Amazon, Walmart, and Target all planning major shopping events for later this month. Amazon's Prime Day is back to its regular midsummer schedule after being delayed to October last year due to the pandemic. And not to be left out, Target and Walmart each have their own deal events starting June 20th, the day before Amazon's 2-day sale.
Prime Day has absolutely become a national shopping holiday in the US. Last year, they delayed it to October and it merged into the holiday season. But now, back in June, I think you'll see that it's going to be the biggest shopping day of the year.
This year, Amazon will focus on small businesses with a curated digital storefront and a $10 credit for those who spend $10 on select small business products ahead of Prime Day. Walmart is saying their deals will be like Black Friday. Look for a 40-inch TV for $178 and a kid's smartwatch for $24.50. The big box giant is also going to be offering in-store only deals as the company expands its opening hours across the country. Target is touting deals on food and beverage and reminding customers that they have no membership fee, a not-so-subtle jab at the $13 per month cost of an Amazon Prime membership. It's a battle of the retail giants, and at the end of the day, the consumer wins.
And even as more and more stores open up across the country, this shift to e-commerce is here to stay. People have gotten very comfortable with clicking that buy button. And one shift we've seen that's likely going to stick around, grocery delivery. More and more people started doing grocery delivery during the pandemic, and that trend is still going strong. Joe, Savannah?
I've gotten more comfortable with the buy button. Thanks, Steph. It's time now for our CNBC Money Minute, the biggest financial headlines of the day and why they matter to you. We will stay on this money topic with CNBC correspondent Christina Parson-Nevelis. Hi there. Good morning, Christina.
Good morning. And yeah, we'll stick with it. But I want to talk about Apple first because they're reportedly working on a new version of the iPad Pro with wireless charging. And to accommodate, Apple will switch to a glass back for the new models instead of the aluminum backing found on every single current iPad on the market right now. Reports say the company may also include reverse wireless charging, which would allow the iPad itself to be a charging point. United Airlines reaches a deal with its flight attendants union on a voluntary vaccination program as Americans gear up for a summer of vacation flights. The union says it expects some countries to make it mandatory for flight crews to be vaccinated. The voluntary program doesn't require flight attendants to be vaccinated, but those who choose to get a shot will receive up to 3 additional vacation days. Lucky. TikTok updated its privacy policy this week, allowing the social media app to collect biometric data on users, including, quote, face prints and voice prints. The policy explains TikTok may collect data about images and audio in users' posts, such as identifying objects and scenery and the location of a face, body features, and the text of words spoken. TikTok tells TechCrunch it could ask or would ask for consent in case it does start collecting biometric data. So that it's the big words there are in case it does. Right, Savannah?
Right. All right, Christina, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Tens of thousands of people are heading to Miami this weekend for what's being called the largest cryptocurrency conference in history. NBC News correspondent Shaquille Brewster joins us now from Miami, where Bitcoin 2021 already looks like it is kicking off. I know it doesn't start till later this morning, but I see the crowds there, Shaq. I mean, is this proof of how much Bitcoin has taken off in the last year or what? Organizers say they've sold out of tickets. Tell us what we can expect.
That's right, Savannah. When we first pulled up, the line was extremely long. They just started letting people in to the event. The doors open officially at 8 a.m. But you mentioned the explosive growth that we've been seeing with Bitcoin, not only in terms of the value of that cryptocurrency, but in terms of people who are coming to events like this. The last one they had in 2019, right before the pandemic, it was about 2,000 attendees that they got. This time around, they sold 12,000 tickets. Savannah, those tickets are not cheap, going for about $1,500 each one. Of course, you can use your Bitcoin to pay for them. Let's show you a little bit of the line and who has come here to this event. One of the things that the event organizers are talking about are those headliners. You'll see headliners like Jack Dorsey of Twitter. You'll hear Tony Hawk, for example. And we have former Representative Ron Paul, who will be here as well. So you'll have all of that happening. Guys, what time did you get here? What time did you get in line?
7:30.
About 7:30. The first person, Savannah, that we met in line got here at 6 a.m. So you can tell just a lot of excitement for this conference coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. And Shaq, you know what I see there? I see a whole bunch of people who are a lot smarter than me because this whole cryptocurrency thing goes right over my head, but they're into it. Right. All right, Shaq, I know organizers both delayed the event and moved it. It was supposed to be in LA. Now, of course, as we see, you are in Miami. That was all because of the pandemic. Tell us more about that decision and how officials there in Miami are working to keep those crowds safe as they welcome them.
Right. It was supposed to be in L.A., and there was some genuine uncertainty over whether they can have a conference of this size in California because of the pandemic. So they moved to Miami. The Miami mayor welcomed them with open arms. You mentioned security, and, this was something that came up and was a factor during Memorial Day weekend. You see the law enforcement presence that's here. This is right in front of the entrance. They're making very clear that they are securing this event. I mentioned the Miami mayor welcoming people here. He did that back in March. It was a tweet that he sent out when some of the organizers were complaining or questioning some of the restrictions in LA. He simply said, "How can I help?" And they eventually moved it here to Miami. Of course, here in Florida, fewer restrictions, especially now after the CDC's mask guidance. You see most of the line without the mask, but we have inside. I mean, it's, an outdoor event mostly. There will be some indoor factors. Vaccination status will not be asked, which is in compliance with Florida law here.
All right. And now Miami, I know, Shaq, is home to a growing number of tech companies. Tell us what's drawing businesses there. How is the tech boom impacting that city?
This is a pattern that you saw right after the pandemic, or really through the pandemic, as businesses, especially tech businesses, went remote. Silicon Valley became a place or became a hub all across the country. And many people have come here to Miami, and Miami has leaned into it. Miami has welcomed tech startups here. They've welcomed people who are working remotely to come to places like that, like this. Two factors that you see mentioned all the time. One, the taxes. Leaving high tax states like California, like New York, like Illinois, coming to places like Florida where that income tax is not a burden. And then the other factor is just living in a better place. Miami, the weather is beautiful, and they're welcoming people, hoping that more people come and make this their tech hub.
Yeah, I mean, you can't argue with the beaches. All right, Shaq, thank you so much. Enjoy. Have some fun at the Bitcoin conference.
You got it. I'm going to learn something.
Yeah. Coming up, flashy, but maybe not so fashionable. Can these LED face masks really drive away your pesky acne? The answer to that next. This morning, we're taking a look at a different kind of face mask. It's an LED mask. These masks are growing in popularity, promising to make a difference in treating acne and improving fine lines through light therapy.
NBC News investigative and consumer correspondent Vicki Nguyen takes a closer look.
On social media, celebrities lighting up their feeds with LED face masks. Some of the brightest stars looking for a little extra glow. The pandemic boosting the popularity of this at-home skincare treatment.
What's happened with sales of these masks?
Patients are coming in every day asking about face masks. They want to know what more they can do for their skin. We're looking at ourselves, for better or for worse, all the time on Zoom.
Dermatologist Dr. Mona Gohara says these devices are safe and can work, especially those with blue and red light.
Blue light actually can target the bacteria in the skin that creates acne and minimize breakouts. Red light, we know, stimulates. It's a long and fancy name. It's called photobiomodulation, which basically means heat energy being delivered to make changes in the skin. In this case, it's increased collagen production.
LED face masks like these claim to do everything from treat acne to reduce the signs of aging, all with just a few minutes of use every day. And you know what? They're no longer just for famous faces. They now come in a wide variety of different shapes, sizes, and of course, price points. So you know what we did? We bought 3 different masks at 3 different price points to see how they work. We really want to know if they are a bright idea. Super comfortable, very lightweight.
First up, the least expensive option, MyFully's 3-color LED face mask, available on Amazon for $39.99.
There's a button, red light, blue, orange, back to red. Got a real raver vibe going on here. So this one...
You make masks look good.
You're very generous. Do you think a mask that's only around $40 could be effective?
I would say it minimally could be effective. But you know what? It may be better than you doing nothing. And I like the fact, again, it's lightweight.
This one's got 2 pieces and requires a little more assembly, but there's a whole neck thing.
Next, the intermediate option, the Photon Mask by Project E Beauty.
And this one has a controller that plugs in.
Costing around $200, this one features 7 different LED colors and promises results after 4 10-minute treatments each week.
This one is quite heavy. Got a Phantom of the Opera feel going on here. Let's get comfy here. It's got a little timer. I'm going to change it to 10 minutes. As they say, I'm going to set it and forget it. I don't want the kids to walk in. I think they'd freak out seeing me wear this thing. So this has got a lot going on. What do you think about something with an extra neck piece?
Yeah. The benefit here would be that you have a little neck piece. You have something else. You have something extra.
This one has a strap that you put around your face.
Finally, the most expensive of the bunch, the Spectralite Facewear Pro by Dr. Dennis Gross, sold at Sephora for $435.
Let's see if I can squeeze it onto my face. Okay, this is tight.
This one emits both red and blue light and says you can start to see a difference after just 2 weeks of 3-minute daily treatments.
This is one of my favorite masks. It's a quick treatment. It has multiple options for the treatments. I like that the area where the eyes are is cut out a little bit more for more kind of protection around the eyes.
While you shouldn't expect a dramatic transformation like this, Dr. Gohara says, face it, no matter what you spend, nothing beats an in-office treatment.
I analogize it to like going to the gym and working out with like a hardcore trainer. That's going to be better than a couple dumbbells at home, right? But both can make a difference.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.